Hello, listening people.
Ho ho ho!
Ho 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 indeed. Listening people, ho ho ho, it's me, Papa Santa, and I'm joined by my other Santa, Santa.
Święty Bartek.
I don't speak North Polnese, but I am actually one of your hosts of this podcast you're listening to called Spit and Polish, likely because we're always spitting and we're both Polish. I'm Ryan.
And I'm Bartek.
And we're both Polish, in case you need that hammered home for you. And we said ho 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 before because we are discriminatory against sex workers, but also
We acknowledge that they exist.
and discriminatory about it, just like the film we're covering today. But we are doing our show, Pictures Powwow, but it's also a Christmassy feel. It's December-y time, it's Christmassy time, Christmas isn't too far away.
We started with a cold movie about water. Now we've got one where it snows a bit, I think, maybe.
It snows a lot.
Yeah.
A train has to stop because it snows so much.
Yes.
Bartek, we're doing Pictures Powwow, the show in which we cover a movie that has been recommended, whether it's from myself, you, or the listening people. This episode, we're covering a Christmas-based movie, or movie that takes place around Christmas, that you recommended.
Yes.
What is that film?
The film is the 2003 Japanese animation film, Tokyo Godfathers.
Or in its original language.
Tokyo Godfathers.
I really thought you had been kind of like, with other ones you've batted out like, oh, the original title was this, so I was waiting for you to be like,
That's a good point.
I got it.
I think this one is the original subtitle, but
Oh, really?
or subtitle title.
Tokyo Godfathers. Great. So we're doing the 2003, Japanese animated film Tokyo Godfathers. If you have not had the chance to watch Tokyo Godfathers, give it a watch, because we're going to be discussing it in depth. We're going to be talking about how we feel about it, what's going on, and if you're at all interested, give it a watch. If you're not, you're going to hear us talk about it anyway. Or you're not, you're going to click off and be like, I cannot stand that they are not doing a movie that I have not seen. Oh, they're doing things that I haven't seen. Oh,
This isn't my field of knowledge.
Yeah, Roger Ebert. So, Bartek, you selected Tokyo Godfathers. Tell us about your history with this movie and why you recommended it.
So about 2 years ago, I was on some site that I'm never really on. I think it was even just Tumblr. And someone made this post about how, I'm always looking for films that are very progressive or feature a lot of, like, trans characters. And yet there was this one from 2003 that I'd never heard of that I finally watched, and it's amazing. And I read that, and I'm like, oh, well, I haven't heard of that film, but I do like anime, and I haven't seen too many anime films. Maybe I'll check that one out.
Because you're more of a TV kind of guy when it comes to the anime
kind of stuff. So I checked it out, and I really liked it, and I think I even recommended it to one or two people at the time. I don't think either of them watched it.
And this film that we're covering is that film you're talking about?
Yes, Tokyo Godfathers. Yeah, and then as we were doing this show, Pictures Power, I was thinking about, like, given my interests, they're a lot different from Ryan's. There's probably going to be a point at some point where I pick an anime film, like a Bollywood film, things like that. And I was thinking about what would be like a good one. And I remembered Tokyo Godfathers. And I was going to pick it at the time where I thought of it. But then I remembered, like, oh, wait, I think it's set during Christmas. I'll have to save it for December.
Ho, ho, ho.
And here we are.
Well, that's fantastic. I have no history with this film until you said it last episode, and I was like, oh, okay. I've watched some anime movies or in Japanese animated films. Less so the TV shows. There's only a few I've bothered with, and I can't say that there's many, if any, that I've stuck all the way through with.
Yeah, that's fair.
I was like most Western boys when Attack on Titan came out. I was like, oh, that sounds interesting. And I watched the first season, and then I've never picked it up again. Because I didn't find it as interesting as everyone else, evidently. When it comes to movies, yeah, I've seen a few, I've seen a good amount of Miyazaki's. I've seen a few others, so when you suggested this, I was like, oh, okay, cool, another one to add. I've recently been watching a couple as well, like I watched Your Name recently, and that's one that everyone has banged on about since it came out, and I never checked it out, and I did, and I enjoyed it. So I was like, yeah, I'm in the spirit, and hey, it's Christmassy, so yeah, cool, because you mentioned that last episode. So I was like, but there was this storm cloud overhead because both my wife and I were very terrified because anytime Bartek and anime has come to on our table for
Pictures power. I mean, for the other one, Mystery Box.
Mystery Box, it's been sexually exploitative in nature.
Oh yeah, I remember the Japanese title for this. It's Urotsuki Doji, Tokyo Godfathers.
And I asked you last episode, is this going to be a hentai? And you're like, no. And I'm like, are you sure though? Thankfully, it wasn't. It was tame. It didn't have anything gratuitous, or it didn't have rape, is what I'm saying.
No.
Which was nice. It felt Christmassy because we were watching Urotsuki Doji 2 at Christmas time.
That's
so
right,
I was like, oh boy, is this his like way of getting it to me again? So I was very thrilled with that, having no understanding of what I was walking into. Just Tokyo Godfathers Christmas. I thought, oh, is this gonna be like a Japanese anime take on like the Three Wise Men? That's what I thought. And yeah, it was something. So Bartek,
There was a baby.
There was a baby, and there were three wise-ish people in their own unique fields. Bartek, what was your thoughts on this when you first watched it, and how do they compare to how you feel now when you watched it this time around?
So over a lot of the films I've picked on Pictures Power, I realise things that I'd seen a long time ago, and part of the experience of me putting them on the show is me re-watching them to remind myself about them. This one's a lot more fresh since it's only been 2 years, but there were like plot points and things that I didn't remember. But obviously I did remember that a big theme of this film is like the homeless.
Yeah.
And that this film, as they show them in a way that humanizes them, but doesn't like, beautify them or anything like that too much. I've forgotten what the question was.
It was basically how were you feeling then to how they are now.
Oh, right. I'll be honest, when the film started, it took a while to get to like the point, which the point is that they find a baby and have to care for it, and there's a lot of like character interactions between the three that tries to be comedic in nature, and it feels like that goes a bit too long. But I feel like after a certain point in the film, it picks up a lot. It's a lot more consistent. And even after I finished watching the film and was thinking back on it, I found myself really appreciating it more.
Yeah, I feel very similar. I found this, to be honest, I found the first half of the movie a bit slow going. Like, I enjoy our characters, I do. It just took a little while for me to get going. I think what really hooked me isn't just them finding the baby, but once they actually start to investigate the case, like, once they actually start getting onto the mystery of where did this baby come from, all that, that's when it picked up for me. But that doesn't really feel like it starts chugging along until they're on the train.
I was actually going to say the same thing. Around the time they got off the train, I felt like the film really picked up.
And that's when and then my big thing that threw me off is, and I go, okay, not only is this a cultural thing, a genre thing, an animation thing, and also a time thing, is it threw me off how abruptly the intro credits happen at you, and how abruptly the film ended.
Yeah.
Less so with the ending. I think the ending I'll get into later, but like the like a truck at the beginning just pulls up with the title, and you're like, oh, okay, I guess we're interrupting that scene now for the intro. Do you know? Did you have that?
Not as much, no, but it was. Yeah, it starts off with like a mass, and then intro, and then food.
Yeah, and like I'm just saying, like I acknowledge all those things I mentioned, like maybe it's a cultural thing, animation thing, and time period thing, and all that. But I was just a bit thrown off. I was like, oh, okay, it has that music where it's all like, and I'm like, okay, wow, that's a bit of a throw off, but okay, we're back into the movie now. I didn't realize what I was getting into. So yeah, we have these three from the outset unlikable characters. One could say they're not the most morally upstanding people. I was interested in the fact that what you mentioned before about trans character stuff.
Yeah.
Obviously, that's going to be a big discussion in this episode, and I wouldn't say that we're the biggest kind of experts in talking about trans characters and rights and how trans characters are represented in films and movies and media. And this one is going to be a tricky one to discuss because how the film handles it is very interesting. And I'm not going to say odd because I've seen it handled in this kind of fashion too. But like, yeah, it's going to be one of those where it's like I can see people who watch it being like, this is transphobic, and others being like, no, it's not.
Yeah.
That kind of thing.
And there's it also kind of ties into the subtitles, like their interpretations of some of the lines.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. So, the thing that I thought about, my prevailing feeling was this film would be very offensive to a lot of people watching it for our like people who watch it for this. Like, you know, there are people who do watch this. I can see a lot of people being like thrown off by the homophobia, the transphobia, all that kind of stuff. Me, I'm just like, nah, I'm fine with that. Like, I get what this is. Like, these are friends ribbing each other and being cruel to each other, as friends often do. And of course, this is heightened by the fact that these people are morally dubious people to begin with. These are all people who have run away from their lives and gone into a cardboard box instead of challenging facing their challenges. That's also something very interesting I found about this movie, Bartek, is our three homeless characters are all homeless in a way in which the film proposes that they didn't have to be homeless in the first place. They actively chose that, which is not always the case with homeless people. But I found that an interesting thing, and they do explore it into the movie. I was like, oh, that's great. You know, I feel like the film does a really excellent job of unfolding the narrative of our three characters, why they're here, how they got here, and without it just being like, and this is the scene now in which you find out their backstory.
And like, it doesn't like start off the film by saying like these are who these characters are, but it doesn't take too long for them to get into all three of them, which I appreciated.
And it's also those twists and turns where some of them are outright lying and some of them are holding back, and some of them are just like, yeah, you know, like I don't know what to say that I haven't already said, you know. So I found that very interesting. Now, Bartek, you're a fan of Japanese animation. What do you think about the actual animation in this film?
Yes, so this sort of ties back to a thing that I briefly mentioned in our The Shining episode, that I'd recently watched a couple of like mind-bending, like confusing things, and it actually ties into my decision to do this film. So maybe you would have read about this, but just to let everyone else know, the director of this film, Satoshi Kon, has directed 4 other things, 3 films and an anime.
Yeah.
And in me picking this, I read that like, oh, Tokyo Godfathers stands out from the bunch because it's the most normal one of the bunch. So I thought like, oh, that's interesting, and I ended up watching all those other 4 things. And I noticed that one thing that his works do, I don't know if he himself is an animator or he just works with the same sort of animation team, is that they try to make the characters actually look kind of Japanese.
Yeah.
Try to make them look a bit more realistic, not like overly beautified.
Or with the weird eyes.
With the weird big eyes. Like they definitely look Japanese in these films. So it's...
Yeah, I didn't think about that.
Yeah.
I mean, I just snapped because it's set in Tokyo and like, yeah, obviously, but like, yeah, you're right. Like a lot of animes have that
Disney inspired style,
that
like Aladdin.
Vague in anime, that vague, like, yeah, they're white, but
exactly.
They're not, right? like that kind of wink, wink, you know, like when people lost their shit about that live action Ghost in the Shell.
Yeah.
But people in Japan were like, we don't give a shit.
You know about the franchise now? Cool, get into it.
Yeah, cool. Wow. I mean, we would have had the nipples. that was the biggest controversy from Japan side, was we added we would have had the nipples, but like that's about it. Like,
forgot about that.
But yeah, dude. Like I thought, I didn't even think about that, and I'm glad to hear that. Like this is an odd one in this guy's filmography and work, because like I was like, okay, I was expecting this to be weird. And then it wasn't, because, you know, a lot of animes, even the more acclaimed one, have that more fantastical edge, which this does have slightly, but more of a farce, with a slight hint towards, you know, destiny and you know, God.
It's very much like a Christmas Miracle kind of thing. Yeah.
Exactly. So I was expecting some more crazy stuff, which we do get occasionally, like when that angel home, like
Yeah,
that
the angel, the flashback that turned out to be a dream, and the baby says a line near the end.
The baby saying a line near the end.
I'll say this, like, because I've watched this before his other films, and rewatching this now, I'm like, oh, there are still little bits of that kind of, what is this really happening magically?
I will say with the baby, my interpretation was that it was just her that heard it because she's like mentally unhinged. But yeah, I would have loved it if it was actually the baby that said it.
And just to cover my ass a bit, because you asked about animation, I talked about art style. I think the animation itself was very good. Like, they all have unique walking and running styles, and it really shows their character.
Yeah, and you know, something I really did appreciate. The very first thing I noticed was I'm forgetting the trans character's name.
Hana.
Hana. I was like, the way we first get introduced, like the way the shot's framed, I was like, oh, okay, that's an ugly looking anime woman. It kind of looks like a guy, right? Yeah. When, you know, in a lot of animes, they're not afraid to draw women in these really grotesque, some women in these really grotesque, masculine-looking ways. You know what I'm talking about? Yep. So I was expecting the film just to be like, oh, okay, that's... But then the character actually is, you know...
biologically male. Yeah.
Biologically male. And I was just like, oh, wow. Like, I wasn't expecting that. I was just expecting it to be a typical anime where they've got, like, this gross... masculine looking woman who's just like there for the sake of comedy or something, and then it actually came around and was like actually a big part of the plot, and I was like, whoa, what? I agree, the animation, they all unique. I also love when they do the flashbacks and how the characters actually look like, that looks like them from years ago. Mm-hmm. They do a good job with that too, because I've watched some animes where they flash back and they look the exact same, and I'm like, why?
Yeah, like the Miyuki, the teenage girl, like when she was living at home, she was a lot more chubby.
Yeah, exactly.
And Gin, the middle-aged man, yeah, when you saw him on the bike, like even though that was a lie, you could still buy that, like, oh, he probably did look like that.
He probably did look like that, though. Yeah, I thought there was a lot of unique stuff with the animation. I also loved how they made Tokyo looked. I loved how the snow looked and how the lighting from the snow really helped things. I also love the weird little animation quirky stuff, like when they show like a bubble come on screen and they'll zip back in time, or like all these random things, like when the gangster guy was underneath his car, and like how they explained that with the animation, as just that alone was really funny. And like stuff like that, or like how they get dramatic with the animation, like when the shooting happens and how dramatic the animation goes with that. I felt like one of the things that I've found with anime too, more TV shows than the movies, but it's like I found with this, I was surprised with how fluid the animation was. I'm a bit more used to it being a little bit more stiff than Western animation, but I found this really fluid.
Oh, his Satoshi Kon's last film, Paprika, which is the one that's like Inception a few years before Inception, has a lot of really fluid animations.
Yeah, and I just loved the environments that we got to see, and it was really interesting. I really engaged with the animation, and I'll be keen to check out this guy's work and the other animators who worked on this as well, because the co-director of this is a guy who's more known for doing like animation itself more than like directing animation. So the other guy who's credited as co-director, who's only done this as a direction thing, is known for doing like lots of animation stuff for like more of the mainstream, like, you know, like I said, Miyazaki stuff and like all those kind of things. So like he has like 20 or 30 credits. So I was like, yeah, I'd be keen to see more of these guys' work in general. So Bartek, this film's funny.
It is funny, yeah.
It is funny. What were some of the comedy aspects that really worked for you?
I mean, the interactions in general I thought were all pretty great. I guess one scene that kind of got into dark comedy was when Gin found the dying homeless man.
Yes.
He played that whole like, oh, senile old man dying, his last request is like a drink, but like they didn't go too over the top with it.
He kept dying and coming back. And like the outside, all the things stop spinning and the light comes on him and it's like all this crazy stuff, and then
and then the reaction of like, oh, rest in peace old man, he's gonna close the eyes. His hands go over the eyes are still open. Like, It's like, oh, one last request.
Could you explain to me, maybe I wasn't paying attention, but the old man hands him like a bag with like a little bag, and he goes, "Take
Mm.
this, because if they find out who I am, they'll all kill me." What was that?
That's a good question. Was did he?
I don't.
Was that bag what had the winning lottery ticket?
I
Or?
think maybe, right? Like
Yeah.
I just couldn't remember. Maybe I wasn't paying attention, or that I could have connected better.
Mm.
Because I didn't really notice that character with the bag from that point on.
Yeah,
Really, I didn't
yeah.
really focus on that as a
And
thing.
especially because earlier in the film they already picked up a bag with a bunch of things in it.
And it's not like we have that moment where he opens the bag and sees what's in it. Like he kind of gets beaten up first, and that was intense.
Oh yeah, the teenage guys.
Yeah, the guys
delinquents.
who are like cleaning up.
I've seen that in a few other things. Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe that's a problem in Japan.
Yeah, and it's a Clockwork Orange type attitude.
Mm.
Yeah, the comedy really worked for me in this, mainly with the animation and the physical kind of comedy. A lot of the reaction shots, or
Reactions
like the
and double takes were great. Yeah.
the slapstick kind of attitude, or like the action and the comedy combined, like when they're doing the truck chase with the bicycle, and then the cab driver, who is probably my favorite character. Because I just love to imagine his night out, where he's encountered like 3 or 4 major occurrences in the city,
It's a good recurring character. Yeah.
and how straight laced he is, but also like, oh boy, I'm being hit on. And he's a good guy. I really liked the comedy, the physical comedy in this. The animation really complement. And like you said, these 3 characters interact really well off of each other. Like when they don't like each other. See, this is like Shrek. In Shrek 1, there's that bit where a character overhears another character and then they separate because they're disagreeing with one another. We have a moment in this movie in which the characters disagree, misunderstand, and separate. But it doesn't ruin the pacing of the movie. Like when, like when they separate off a few times.
Yeah, especially Gin.
Yeah, Gin separates off on his own, or they leave him, and it's like, it's still fun. It doesn't, like, the pacing of the movie in the middle portion in particular is really strong. I feel like the first bit was a little, like I said, the first, like, let's say half hour, 40 minutes were a bit slow for me.
I think it was like 25, 30 minutes.
I think just with me getting up to pace with it. And then the last moment of the film I feel odd about, but not for pacing reasons, just for more, I want a different kind of satisfaction than the movie's wanting to give. Yeah, the comedy in this I found interesting. Yeah, and I just love how cruel they are to one another. See, I think a lot of people would get turned off by this because of how mean-spirited our characters are.
Yeah.
But as you and I know, as with movies we've covered on this show, we're not afraid to lavish in the mean-spirited nature of characters to a certain degree.
Mm-hmm.
Did you, however, find that the movie overstepped it at any point? Like it stepped over the line of mean-spiritedness? Was there any moments where you're like, oh, that's a bit much?
I don't think so, but it is true that the subtitles showed me the words, faggot and homo a lot.
It did.
And I could definitely see some people, especially because early on in those first 25 minutes, it gets shown a lot. I could see a lot of people maybe turning off the film for that reason alone.
Yeah.
But I also agree. Yeah, these people are friends, and it's not like they're saying it's bad that you're this. This is just the word I'm using to make fun of you, kind of thing, I guess.
And also, this is from 2003 from Japan.
Yeah.
So there's a time stamp there and a cultural stamp there,
Yeah.
and
I mentioned earlier the word that they used on Hana a lot is okama, which I think a lot of places you'll see that it does get generalized to like faggot or something like that. But I think it covers a bit of more of a range of things. Like it could mean like an effeminate man, it could mean a cross-dresser or a drag artist or even a transgender person. So I think maybe it was a bit generalized to replace all of them with just faggot or homo, but again, this is also 2003 Japan. It could be either way. It could be on the film, it could be on the translators, or it could just be both. Yeah,
I would be curious. It's a curious thing when it comes to these kind of things. Like for me, I don't think it ever stepped over the line for me either. There was some moments where I was like, oh, well, that's a bit full on. Like I said, I think about how other people would react to this sometimes because
In those first 25 minutes, I'm like, will Ryan actually like this? Am I misremembering this film? But then when it picked up, I'm like, no, I didn't misremember.
my wife Rachel, she didn't care for this movie as much. Like she liked it fine enough, but she's like, it was all right.
Mm-hmm.
For me, I enjoyed it thoroughly. Like
I'm glad.
it's not like my most top 10 anime, but I really did find myself a bit surprised with where it went and how deep it got. Because, like you said, those first 25-30 minutes, you're thinking, oh, is it going to be just these guys being cruel to each other, and they're gonna have crazy homeless hijinks with the baby, which is exactly what happens. But
Yeah.
there's a deeper level here that they delve into with our characters. Talking about our characters, do you have a favorite out of our three?
I'm not sure if I do. I think all of them brought something to the table.
Yeah, it's a hard one to pick. Like when I thought, oh, this person's my favorite, then the movie will focus on another one, and I'm like, oh, I like them. I like them. I like this one. Yeah, it's a hard one. This is a really good example of a movie that knows how to juggle the attention of your characters. Like I said, characters separate off. We focus on this one's backstory. We focus on this one in the current moment. And it was
I did
interesting juggling act.
I liked how the journey started off having nothing to do with their backstories, but in the process of, like you said, investigating, it did bring their backstories into the mix.
Yeah, because of course the whole thing is them about reuniting a family together, and they're all people who are from broken homes in some way, whether it be from circumstances.
They have a parenthood issue of
Yeah,
some sort.
they have some kind of issue when it comes to family, whether it's something they've created on their own or something that's been bestowed upon them.
Yeah, one of them even is the father of the situation.
Exactly. So yeah, I found that dynamic interesting. Like I said, it's hard for me to pick. I think what was the young girl's name again?
Miyuki.
I liked her, I think, out of all of them. I liked how, I don't know, she was the most emotionally closed off with them, but emotionally open with us, the audience, in a lot of ways. Like, finding out her backstory is very interesting,
Yeah,
and
she doesn't even tell it to either of the two, yeah.
And I also like that we don't get the full picture of what her backstory is. Like, she stabbed her dad because he lost the cat.
Yeah, that was clearly like a straw that broke the camel's back. What else was on the camel? Yeah.
Exactly. And then the cat came back, and all this crazy stuff. And I'm like, I could watch another movie with her as a character. I'd like to know what she's up to.
Yeah, I read somewhere online that I think whoever wrote what I read online thought that her arc was incomplete, but I thought we got enough pieces of it. Like, you could do more with it, but I think there was at least enough.
I agree on a level with that critique, because my big problem with the ending is, and this is just me being sentimental,
Yeah.
I wanted a hug.
Yeah.
I wanted to see a physical embrace, not just dad, and then they're like, whew, and then end.
Like Miyuki dead.
And then end.
And then Japanese Ode to Joy.
A part of me also wanted the parents to meet Tokyo Godfathers. Like, I wanted, I don't know, I'm a bit more
The movie basically ended with the beginning of an emotional scene.
Yeah, and I can see why a critique could be made that the arc feels incomplete. With me, maybe, a physical embrace would have been nice.
I could have used more, but at least we were given the pieces to know how the scene would play out at least.
Exactly, which is understandable, but there's still going to be that little point down for me where I was like, I want a hug, man. Like, I just want a physical embrace or something. I want a nice... like, we still have a nice ending here, but I wanted some syrup on there.
Yeah, the big thing with Miyuki is that for everyone who hasn't seen the film, is that she stabbed her father, and she thinks that if she sticks around, she's gonna get arrested because her dad is a police inspector. But the dad, in all the lines we hear of him, is clearly 100% focused on, "Are you okay?"
Yeah, and meanwhile the mother's somewhere.
Yeah, all we know is that the mum prays in a funny way.
A lot.
Yeah.
I think I really attached myself to her as a character at the end of this. I thought this one, no. But then at the end, I'm like, we end with her and I was like, I was really surprised too. I was like, of course that's her dad. We've met him already, but didn't twig until
Yeah, yeah.
that moment happened, because they showed him just enough for you not to fully remember what his character design was.
And we also saw him from the back of the head until he entered the threes.
That's
hospital
true.
room. Yeah.
Yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed that.
Yeah, and speaking of the climax, which happened just before that scene, it was nice that all three characters had their own moment. Like, Gin had the whole chase to the building, she had the running up the building,
Yeah.
and then Hana had, catching the baby as it was falling.
Yeah. Exactly. Like, this film knows how to juggle all these things and knows how to utilize our characters and give them their moments and to give them their weak moments and their strong moments. This is just the basics, and this film just does it to a T. One of the things I was a bit confused on, because there were some things that I found a bit confusing. When we have the shootout moment and the
Yakuza wedding.
The Yakuza wedding, and we have the Latin American guy kidnaps her and takes her to this place and leaves her there. Why? Like, I was just a bit confused. Like, what is this? Like, he's taken her to where, and why are they letting her go? I was a bit confused. Can you clarify any of that for me?
The way I saw it was, like, obviously the reason why he had Miyuki and the baby was as a hostage thing, because he's just tried to kill, the fiance to the Yakuza Don's daughter. So at first it was a thing of, like, stay back or I will shoot her. But then I saw beyond that, I think he was just trying to take her to a safe place.
Right.
And, like, it was his wife who's
it was his wife, yeah.
I think so. Well, part of the deal with this scene, for people that haven't seen it, is that it's intentionally bilingual so that the characters don't really understand each other. But especially when it focuses on that guy's wife, it's meant to be, like, tender in spite of that.
Yeah, were we meant to not get subtitles for what she was saying?
I think that was intentional.
That's good, because I want to make sure of that, because I was like, oh, this is an interesting thing, because we got it for certain words when she spoke in the same language. Or
yeah, there were times where they said English words and like, oh, we know these, policemen.
English words, and or words that is like, she understands, no matter the language barrier. I was like, I understand what you're saying with that.
Like, and pointing at like an older man in front is like padre. It's like, oh, that's father. I think,
okay. Because I was a bit confused. Like, where did he go? That guy.
Yeah, that's a good question.
And it was just like, why did he dump her with this woman who's not armed? Like, I was a bit confused with that. It was, it was one of those little things where I was like, maybe I could have had a little bit more something here.
Satoshi Kon wants to confuse us in this film, at least, at some point, I guess.
Yeah, like, it was nothing major, but it was one of those things where I was like, now they're just letting her go? Like, have fun. It's like, you could lead police straight back here, bye-bye. I'm like, what? But, it's all fine. Like, it was a great scene or sequence as well with them two characters, and like we said about the bilingual nature of the scene, and very interesting and whatnot, and the motherly bond there with both the babies there. It was cute. Like, baby be cute, and that scene had baby be cute.
Two babies.
They had two. I'm trying to think what else is there. Well, I really did enjoy the bit in which they go to the house, what is left of the house of the people that they believe to be the parents of this child.
Yeah, they found a photo at one point of where the parents of the baby used to live, and they were looking for, like, context clues, like, oh, we'll see this building in the background from this angle, so they were looking for that. And when they found that angle, the house that was in the photo was no longer there.
I love the humor in that scene of him unlocking the door with the key to open. It's like, honey, I'm home. And then the door just slowly falls over.
Tadaima.
And then, of course, asking the neighbors. And then the neighbors ask other neighbors. And it becomes like a whole street of, like, a gaggle of women just, like, gossiping.
That was an exaggeration of a Japanese cliche of, like, the gossiping middle-aged women.
I really enjoyed that. I thought that was really funny.
There's an episode of Satoshi Kon's anime series, Paranoia Agent, that's centered entirely around a couple of women just like that, talking about rumors.
But I really enjoyed that. That was one of the humorous scenes that I found a lot of enjoyment with. Let's talk more about our three central characters, their backstories. We've talked about one of them.
Yep, so the three characters, just to remind us, are Gin. He's a middle-aged man who he's a father, but he claims that his wife and daughter died when he couldn't get money for them, but that turns out to be a lie. There's Hana, the trans woman who wants to be a mother and has really attached herself to the baby, and Miyuki, who ran away from home after stabbing her father.
Yes. Which one do you want to talk about and their story?
I guess we could start with Gin's one. So his whole deal was that he racked up some debts. He couldn't save his family.
As we find out.
But then as we find out, it was just drinking and gambling, getting into debt, and then he just kind of ran away from all that. And yeah, we learn that slowly throughout the story, and he eventually... Because one of the big things that happens in this film that I think some people could criticize it for, but I bought it. The story progresses through a lot of Deus Ex Machina. They just happen to come across, the ruins of the house when they found a place to stay. Hana and the baby didn't die because of a convenient gust of wind. Little things just keep leading them to the next point.
Yeah.
And it's meant to be... And Hana does have a line at some point saying that...
What God is about. God saves this baby.
God saves this baby. This baby is blessed. As long as we're with this baby, everything will be fine.
Yeah, I bought into it with that logic.
And even when the gust of wind thing happened, I actually found it quite moving.
I did too.
Yeah.
It physically moved the character.
Yep, and like...
I did a Bartek.
Yeah, it helped her, glide down. And yeah, part of what, like I said earlier, this journey that had nothing to do with their pasts end up, healing them in a way. And part of that is that he meets his daughter again and finds out she's happy and that she missed him.
Yeah, I found that a really nice moment. I think when it comes to the Deus Ex Machina stuff, I think my biggest problem was how much money they did and didn't have. It just seemed like there were moments where the film was like, oh, they don't have enough money. And then other moments it's like, oh, they have enough.
Yeah, casually go buy something.
Yeah, that was my biggest problem. Was I understood with his character because he was saving money aside and all of that.
Yeah, that's true, yeah.
I got a bit confused. Clarify for me this. I thought there was a moment where he talked with both of them about his daughter and how he's saving this money for her, and then they meet the daughter, but then it's like a big betrayal moment that she's alive and whatnot. Did I misinterpret that? Was he maybe talking about, there was a scene earlier where he was talking about, I've got this 30,000 yen I've saved up for my daughter.
Mm-hmm.
And then later in the movie, he meets the daughter and gives her the, and they talk, and then, Hana's all, upset about it. It's like, you lied to us, and then they storm off. I got a bit confused. Did I misinterpret that first scene? Was he talking about it if she was alive? I was a bit confused by that. Do you know what I'm talking about?
I vaguely know what you're talking about. There's some confusion there. So he spent the 30,000 on Hana.
Yeah, but earlier in the movie, I think it's when they were sitting at that convenience store that they get kicked out of and the ambulance randomly goes into it. He's he shows the money and talks about I'm saving this up for my daughter. Blah, blah,
I want to do something for her considering I've been absent.
Yeah, so I was like, the audience was like, oh, she's alive. Oh, he was making that up before. But then the movie kind of comes in later and was like, hey, you lied. And I'm like, I already understood.
I think because after that, Hana and Miyuki leave and they have that conversation about I'm trying to be, the blue Oni to his red Oni. And I think her point there was that she was trying to help him by bringing that up, I guess, to kickstart their reunion.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. I think it was just in that moment, I was so confused while we were having a big dramatic scene.
Yeah. She explains it in the next scene, but I guess, yeah.
Yeah, I really did I like the reunite, and I just liked that it reminded him that, hey, I am a piece of shit. This is all on me.
You killed someone to gain sympathy in your story. The only racing you've done is running away.
I also like the little touch that the mother's new boyfriend's backstory was the backstory he used at the beginning of the movie. Is that correct? It was something like that, where it's his kid died and then the wife passed on soon after. Is what the mother's new boyfriend's backstory was, and he used that for himself earlier in the movie.
I can't remember if it was exact, but they definitely drew parallels. I think
it was that exact phrase that
Yeah.
that the daughter uses, like, oh yeah, and then the mother passed, and then his wife passed soon after, and that's what set off Hana's like, hey, you son of a bitch. I like I like these little touches like that. Yeah, I found his story very moving. I like the fact that there was a lie at the beginning of it. Like, I thought, like, okay, because I genuinely bought his story at the beginning. I didn't think it was going to be a fucking lie.
Again, yeah, that was like the first time we really tried to understand his character.
It was the first time we got a humanizing moment with any of our characters, other than them finding a baby.
Yeah, and he had that whole angle where like his head was aimed down, you didn't see his eyes, he was telling the story, you could see his beard, and it's like, oh, we're hearing a sad man's tale.
And he's making the milk, and he's like, I know kids.
Yeah.
So it was really, really nice. Yeah, no, I didn't find it too much of it. I mean, I found the whimsical nature of the movie to excuse the Deus Ex Machinas to a certain point, and I don't get hung up on Deus Ex Machinas as much as other people in movies. Like, if the movie's crafted well enough for me, I'll give it a break for the most part. I'll give it like, I'll let it slide by for most films. But this one I did. I just like, hey, the wind. Yeah, I understood it was God.
Mm-hmm. It was Kami-sama.
Exactly. I did like that. Yeah, the was it the blue devil, red devil thing. Yeah. In the story, I like that. I like the animation that they did for that too. That was really sweet.
Was it animated?
Oh no, but like the
art. Yeah.
The art. Sorry, the art for it. That was really great.
Yeah, it's nice and stylized. It looked like the two characters.
Yeah, but without too much of it being like, hey, it's them. You get it?
Yeah.
And then we got Hana's story, who's very interesting.
Yeah.
I found that a very interesting story. I found that bit of the movie a turn I didn't expect to be going on when they get into the club with all the old drag queens and whatnot.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, where are we going?
Yeah, so the owner of the club, who's a very old drag queen, and I think there was like a double meaning joke there, because in Japan, female owners of clubs like that are called like mama or a-san, so it's like, oh, but it's also a character that raised you. Yeah. So double meaning of mama there. Yeah, Hana worked there and lived there, I guess. But then one incident happened where someone called her a shitty old man or shitty old fart, and she had that line of like, you can call me shitty, but not old fart, old man.
And then goes ape shit.
Which is something that Miyuki called her early in the film that she apologized for. And then, yeah, she injured that guy, and she felt like, oh, I have to leave this place now, and that's how she became homeless.
Yeah, that, and obviously, what was it, her boyfriend died.
Yeah, she had a lover who died.
Because he slipped on soap.
The movie had a joke, was like, did he die of AIDS? And it's like, no, he slipped on soap.
Yeah, I like how you say joke.
I mean, it was...
like, yeah, the joke is that he slipped on the soap, but you said it like, they had a joke about, like, was it AIDS? No, it was soap. I mean, it did go down like that, but it felt more sincere than it was how you said it. Like,
I know. It was sincere, but it was a little bit different.
Because
also,
then the sentiment is, well, life can be, like, take you like that with anything, huh?
Yeah, and also, like what we were saying, there are some good reactions in the film. The mama character had some pretty good ones. Just a lot of, like, kind of things.
And this is the point in the movie, for me, in which it truly establishes that these characters, once this movie's over, whether it was going to show it or not in the actual film, but I knew after that these characters can return back to what their lives were.
Yeah.
Because that's, like, really the first kind of indication of that.
Oh, well, yeah, and even Miyuki has the whole thing of, like, hey, I ran away from home, I could just go back any time, and then Gin mentions, like, oh, it's the people that say that will remain homeless or something like that.
Yeah, and, I found that was a nice moment, and I liked the animation, too, for their backstory of that incident, and how, like, colorized it was, and, like, how over the top and rounded all the characters were. Like, they weren't as jagged or edged as the animation was for the rest of the movie. Like, it was
we thought it was a flashback, but then it turned out to be a dream because Gin and Hana and the baby were suddenly there. Like, the baby's your angel, the angel being the name of the cat.
Yeah. They had really fun animation for flashbacks and dreams. Yeah, the animation's really good. But yeah, with Hana's backstory, I just found it, like, interesting and really mature. Like, these characters talking, all of them in that club talking to one another a lot of maturity there. Like, there's still some, like, hey, don't touch me kind of, like, humor, but, like, I found it very mature, very grounded for a movie that had a homeless guy riding a bicycle at the same speed as a truck. Uh,
He was determined.
He was determined. He was a bike.
His name is. He was a bike.
He was a bike. He owned a bicycle store. So
his name is Gin. I think that means silver. He could get a silver medal.
I took it as gin, as in glug glug. No, because
I think Hana means flower.
Now let's talk about the trans aspect of this movie. You mentioned that this thing that you read that interested you talked about this as a like trans character thing and whatnot.
Yeah, so that's the thing that got me interested. Not because that in general, but it's because it's something I haven't heard of that seems to be significant in some way. I felt like that would be a good thing to add to my library of films that I've seen.
Yeah, I found it a bit like I can see this being one of those movies that people go, "This is transphobic," or "This isn't," and this is.
It is very confused. I think the film struggles to decide whether this is a male or a female.
Yeah,
cross-dressing homosexual or trans woman. Yeah.
This is a problem with media back in the day and even now sometimes. Like, there's a show I really like called Soap, in which Billy Crystal played a homosexual character on that, but his character also wanted to get a sex change, but he wasn't trans, and it's like this whole confusing understanding of homosexual culture as well as trans culture, and like the idea that these two things are the same thing kind of blurs the line. And I think for the most part this is a progressive movie for trans characters, especially in anime. Like, I haven't seen any trans characters in anime that aren't just side characters that are there for a laugh.
Yeah.
So maybe I'm not.
There is a lot of comedy surrounding Hana, but it is mature.
Yeah,
in the end,
there's maturity, and I'm like you. Unlike you, I'm not 100% confident of just saying like she or he, because it is so confused. Like, that's the biggest problem when it comes to the trans angle, is it is a bit confused, and also there's a cultural difference here, and it's a time difference too. Like, we understand that, but I can see a lot of people being turned away from a modern perspective on this. But at the same time, I've watched modern things that still don't really, and even remove it from the real world, like our real world understanding. From the narrative in the film, it's still confused of how like that character is supposed to be represented, because Hana themselves refers to themselves as a guy at points and as an old queen and this. So it's like, yeah, and I get it. You can be like, I'm not saying that trans people can't refer to themselves in these ways. Of course they can, but it's just like in the narrative of the film, and it's only like an hour and 25-minute long film or whatever it is. It would have been nice to clear up some of the confusion or kind of contradictions.
Especially when there are sort of some conclusive statements like "God made a mistake with me," or "What the biggest problem is that they put me in the men's ward," and things like that.
Yeah, and then obviously two gags I did like that really did revolve around the confusion and or trans aspect of that character was when they're following the footprints. And they're like, yeah, well, you can alter pretty much everything except for your feet. And I was like, okay. But also my big laugh out loud moment, I was waiting for this conversation. My big laugh out loud moment in the movie was, you set up that he's like, I'm eating for two.
Eating for two.
And then you meet that character again. Like,
when they have the baby.
He really was eating for two. Like the shock. Like, oh my god, their world, that poor Christian woman's world was shattered.
And there was also that double meaning where, like, oh, she actually was eating for two. She was talking about Miyuki.
Yeah, exactly. But also just like, did he give birth to a baby? Because it's a newborn baby. Oh,
Within a few hours.
Within a few hours. Yeah, exactly. So I that was a big laugh out loud moment. But yeah, I don't have a problem with it. I can separate it, but I can see a lot of people and some trans people saying like, this is a confusing mess to a point in which it's transphobic and misunderstanding how this all works. But I have enough distance to understand that this is just a film that has its heart in the right place, but maybe doesn't fully get in, like, and life can be confusing and messy, and pronouns and understanding of these things, people flip on them all the time. I get it, but like, just for the flow of the movie, it would have been nicer if they didn't make it a little. They could have made it less contradictory.
Yeah.
There's something I want to say, Bartek. Now we're to move on to the final act of this movie.
Mm-hmm.
You're a fan of the film Kung Pao.
Yeah,
Yes?
yeah.
Yes. During the chase sequence with the truck, there's a piece of music that plays that is exactly in my brain, sounds like a piece of music from the film Kung Pao.
Yeah.
And it threw me off the scene for a while. I was like, oh, that's like in the film Kung Pao. I don't know why, but it just stuck with me. And it's just like, what? And they came out similar years, both films.
I think Kung Pao, was early 2000s, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was after The Matrix, because the cow scene.
Mm.
But I was like, okay, is this the same composer or what? I don't know. But I had a quick look, and I listened to both of them side by side. I'm like, this is similar, but they're not the same person, but similar. Just a quick, like, 30-second piece of music in that chase scene that's like in the middle of it too, not even for the full thing, just in the middle section.
So what was better animated, the chase scene or the cow?
Tonguey. From Kung Pao.
They put a face on a tongue.
And then a tongue comes out of it. He goes, aye, aye, and then a little tongue comes out. We're going to do a Kung Pao on the show one day.
Yeah, I'd like to.
See if it ages well. I think the only weakness in Kung Pao is the cow Matrix scene. I think that's the weakest moment of the film.
I'd probably agree, yeah. Taco Bell.
You know what I say? You know what I always do for Kung Pao? I always go, swing, swing, swinging my chain, swing, swing, swinging my chain, or tiger, Bertie. Enough about Kung Pao. We could do a Kung Pao.
Kung Tokyo.
How do you feel about how this movie has Christmas and Christian elements just kind of floating on in the breeze and flowing through the movie? How do you feel about that?
Well, when it started with the priest talking about Jesus' summer and all that, it did feel kind of like, Gin and Hana didn't really care. They're just going through the motions so they can get some free food. But it did have, I guess, some, references to the three wise men,
Yeah.
They had the baby rather than going to the baby. Honestly, I didn't really think about it too much.
Not with all the Christmas songs they shoved in there?
I know that there were a lot of Christmas songs, yeah, but it felt, I think it was I was going to say it's more subtle, but
No,
I don't think
it was subtle. Those were just a jab.
I know. I know I picked it as a Christmas episode, but it's more just, I was just thinking, it's set during Christmas.
Yeah, for me, I was just curious because I've watched anime movies and a lot of their spirituality is that general kind of Eastern spirituality where
Yeah,
it's
a
like...
lot of Shinto for Japan.
Yeah, and your nature and spirits and whatnot. So it was nice. It was interesting to see a movie in which it kind of was like had that more Christian-esque feel, in which it's like God did it instead of like, spirits.
It's not as big, but there is Christianity in Japan.
Oh yeah. There's a lot of Christianity within Asian culture. It's just interesting to see it in media. I'm not,
yeah.
and it's not even that heavy in this. I just found it something interesting. And yes, it's set during the Christmas Eve, New Year's time. It's like in between.
Yeah.
It goes through that period. I don't know. At the end, there, so it's like, it's gonna be.
It's like the last day of the year, but also it was Christmas at the start. Like I know a few days passed, but I don't think it was the full week between. So.
It's a bit confusing.
Yeah.
It's Deus Ex Machina, baby. No, I thoroughly enjoyed this. This was an entertaining little film. I'm really curious to check out his other movies, even though I hear they're weird.
Oh, but good weird.
Good weird.
One of them I definitely want to do on the show. I think Paprika would be interesting to do alongside like Inception.
Is he working on anything new?
He's probably working on his House in Heaven.
Oh, is he dead?
Yeah, he passed away in like 2010.
Oh, I didn't realize he had passed
away.
So
you can catch up on everything. There won't be any new stuff.
Oh.
And
I didn't realize that.
Yeah,
I was like,
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, unfortunately, he was. I really enjoyed all the stuff he made.
Well, yeah, something to check out.
In fact, I remember after we did The Shining, I was telling you about a bunch of the stuff I watched. I watched stuff other than his. I think I said that my least favorite thing was one of his films, and when I described it, you were like, that actually sounds kind of good. And I'm like, yeah, it was good. That was Millennium Actress. Which I think there was a poster for the first two films he did briefly in this film.
No, all three.
Yeah, and Tokyo Godfathers. And I know that in Paprika there is like a movie theater motif, and you see those three posters there as well.
Man, the ego to do that, the balls. It's no M. Night Shyamalan, but like...
Well, I mean, what's he going to do? Make up new films?
Exactly. What's he going to do? Make up new films?
You know, in his first film, Perfect Blue, which I think I might pick for next year's horror month, or spooky month, there's a scene in it that Darren Aronofsky bought the rights to the film so that he could remake a scene from that in his film Requiem for a Dream.
Oh my god. Oh no, don't give in too much, because if we do watch it, I'll know what scene it is. Darren Aronofsky, you hack! Go shoot a camera right up in Jennifer Lawrence's face and call it a movie. That's right, I didn't like Mother. I don't like The Fountain either. So, Bartek.
Yes?
Is there anything else you want to discuss about this movie before we close the book on it?
Not to any meaningful degree, but jumping way back to when we did our episode on G-Force, we talked a little bit about voice actors and how you mentioned, like, oh, you like to try to pick out some.
Yeah.
I try to do the same thing too, but I focused a lot on Japanese voice actors, and in this film, I think I picked out like 4 that I knew.
Oh.
So that was a nice little bonus for me, because I like picking them out.
Nice.
Like, the taxi driver is a guy called Koichi Yamadera, who he's the main character in Cowboy Bebop and Spike. The guy that gets shot at the wedding is Rikiya Koyama, who's got like this really cool kind of calm voice, but he sometimes uses it for comedy. Gin's daughter, Kyoko, which by the way, that's a recurring name through the film. They keep meeting Kyokos. That's a lady called Mamiko Noto, who's known for a very like kind of high hush voice, very distinctive. And the person she's marrying, the doctor, is a guy called Akio Otsuka, he's the Japanese Solid Snake. He's got that, like, he's got that, very deep voice. It's also very distinctive.
Nice.
Yeah. That's just a little gush from me. It's
Gush, now put the plug back in so we can get that gush. Okay, wow, we're back. Okay, so we did watch a porn, huh? No.
Hey, Gin grabbed a tit at one point.
He did, but it was a closed one. We
That's
did
true.
get nipples.
Breastfeeding nipples.
Well,
one of them wanted to breastfeed, but
she didn't get the...
Well, she had a miscarriage. We didn't talk about that character at all.
We kind of did. She's fine.
Yeah.
She's like a thrown at the last minute kind of antagonist.
She was the goal throughout the film, but yeah.
But then she was like crazy.
Yeah.
We didn't talk about her husband either, who lived in a trash pile. I don't know.
Well, he lived in a messy apartment room.
It was so filled with trash that the
Gin
guy tripped over him.
Thinking it was just, trash.
All right. I think that's about it with Tokyo Godfathers.
Mm-hmm. Do you recommend it, Ryan?
I do. It's if you give it a chance, it will grow on you. That's what I think about it. Like, that first chunk can be a bit slow, and you could be a bit put off by the mean-spirited nature of our characters. But in the end, it's worth it, and you should watch it on Christmas with your kids.
Mm-hmm.
Can you imagine? But yeah.
And then they'll be quoting, like, do you want an ambulance or do you want heaven?
Yeah, exactly.
That funny line.
That hilarious line that all kids love. You recommend it, of course?
Yes, I enjoyed it, and I enjoyed it the second time, and I enjoyed it after the second time, too, just thinking about it more.
There you go.
I guess one last thing I'll mention is there was that shot where after Gin was beaten up by the homeless hunter guys.
Yeah.
And he's, like, bloody and walking through an alley, and he, like, collapses. They got that shot of, like, up the stairs of the alley, you can see people walking by, but, like, Gin doesn't call out to them. It really evoked this feeling of, like, oh, even if he did call out, they might not
They wouldn't help him, yeah.
Because homeless discrimination,
Yeah, this film does deal with that. Like, when they're on the train, and everyone's like, they stink.
Yeah.
I mean, they would. But, I mean, come on.
Yeah.
All right, well, Bartek, next episode... It's my recommendation.
Oh, this is bold. We're not ending it with a C next time. Wait, what about next episode?
Exactly. We'll end it with hello, listening people, and then a loop.
Well, I'll say ho ho ho, but you can say ho. Yeah.
So next episode, my Christmassy pick.
Mm-hmm.
This will come out just before Christmas, I believe. My episode, that is. I'm choosing a Christmas classic that Bartek, I'm pretty sure you haven't seen. But I think you're very aware of it.
Mm-hmm.
We're doing a real staple of Christmas. This is like a Christmas classic.
Mm-hmm.
You're smiling because you know what it's going to be. Do you want to guess?
Is it It's a Wonderful Life?
No, it's Jingle All The Way, buddy.
Oh, Jingle All The Way. I thought it was like, oh, am I going to have to unwrap my DVD?
No, you're going to have to buy a DVD of Arnold Schwarzenegger and Sinbad's classic, Jingle All The Way, with Jake Lloyd, the film that got him Star Wars. The film that...
Finally, I hit a
Got it.
milestone.
You're going to hit a milestone. Don't put that cookie down now. You can see that for real.
It's just like I imagined it.
And so we're going to be covering Jingle All The Way with Schwarzenegger. Watch the theatrical cut. There's like a TV cut that's longer where they just
okay.
extend scenes because it needed to be longer for TV, which is unusual.
Is the film less than 90 minutes theatrically?
You can look it up on IMDb.
All right.
I can't remember. It feels long enough to me. So we're going to be covering that next episode. So make sure to check Jingle All The Way.
Check that movie out.
Get to the chopper.
That's not the film. It's another film.
How do you know?
Seen.
How do you know? How do you know that it's not referenced? Schwarzenegger references his own movies all the time in other movies. You don't know until next week when you can tell me I'm wrong.
I'm a confident bluffer.
Contradiction in terms from Bartek. Bartek?
You can be a confident bluffer.
No, but you can't.
Oh, I see. The I'm and confident is... that's clever. But it had to be explained, so is it clever?
It is.
Okay.
I'm very, very clever. I'm a clever boy, clever Trevor.
Shit, none of those words are contradictory.
So, Bartek.
Yes?
A pleasure.
Pleasure. I'm very glad you enjoyed the film.
Yeah, dude. I'm glad I got to reference Kung Pao a bit.
I'm glad you did that too.
Yeah, man. I mean, Wimp Low. Wait, maybe Wimp Low's still alive. Oh, wait, no.
If you've got an ass, I'll kick it.
I like when his shoes squeak wherever he goes. Man, we should be doing that. But, listening people, you can find us on the social medias of Facebook and Twitter, Spit and Polish Presents. I mean, we're pretty popular. Matthew Lillard liked one of my tweets about his fashion as Shaggy Rogers in the Scooby-Doo movies.
Yeah, and I don't know if you want to keep this in, but we made money for the first time.
We made some money from our podcast. Get in that revenue, bro. Ho ho ho, Santa Claus. No, you can find us on the Facebook and Twitter. Tweet at us, message us. We have an email, spitandpolished@gmail.com. Email us with your thoughts, your suggestions for films, or just general kind of email needs. Like, do you have a scam? We'd love to get your email. Are you a widow who needs money so that she can get out of this old folks' home? We got the email address, spitandpolished@gmail.com.
Are you lonely and just want a conversation? You can even just message us.
Are you a Nigerian prince?
Tell us about life in a palace. That sounds interesting.
And being in Nigeria. I'm interested in that too. I'm not just all about the palace, bro. We are on also all the podcast catchers, Apple, Google, Spotify,
iHeartRadio,
TuneIn,
the Spanish
one, Conquistador Radio. No. So until next time, listening people, remember, ho ho ho.
Don't forget it.